The night the world shifted for Adrian Hale began with a single question that kept echoing in his mind. What's the point of having everything if none of it feels real anymore? He stood on the balcony of the Hale Estate's penthouse, 40 floors above the city, watching the lights glimmer like diamonds scattered across velvet. Everyone believed he was lucky. Everyone believed he was happy. Everyone believed wealth was enough. They were wrong. Adrian, the only heir to the billion-dollar Hale Corporation, felt more like a beautifully wrapped, hollow box, displayed, admired, and empty inside. His father expected perfection. His mother expected elegance. Society expected success. But nobody ever asked Adrian what he wanted. He wasn't even sure he knew anymore. That's when he first saw her. It was a Friday evening, and instead of attending another gala filled with people pretending to like him, he snuck out, hoodie on, no driver, no security. He walked through a quiet neighborhood near East Ridge, a place so different from his world it felt like another universe. Children played outside, neighbors talked over fences, and laughter filled the streets. Real laughter, not the polite, rehearsed kind he heard at elite events. Adrian slipped into a tiny, locally owned coffee shop called Maple and Steam. It smelled like cinnamon and warm pastries, comfort, kindness, and home, all in one breath. And behind the counter stood her, Elena Brooks. Her hair was tied in a loose ponytail. A smudge of flour dusted her cheek, and she smiled at each customer like she genuinely meant it. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. Adrian froze when their eyes met for the first time. Hers were warm, gentle, curious, not the judging, calculating stares he was used to. "Rough day?" she asked when he reached the counter, her voice soft but steady. He exhaled, without realizing he'd been holding his breath. Something like that. "What can I get for you?" He glanced at the menu, but didn't really read it. "Whatever you recommend." Her eyes brightened. "Risky. Most people don't trust my choices." "I do," he said, and it surprised him how much he meant it. She made him a caramel cinnamon latte with extra foam. He took one sip, and for the first time in years, Adrian smiled without forcing it. "So," she asked, leaning forward, "good or terrible?" He hesitated. "Perfect." She laughed lightly, and something about the sound settled his restless heart. He found himself returning the next day, and the day after, and the day after that. He came for the coffee, but stayed for Elena. She didn't know who he really was. She didn't know his last name, his wealth, his family legacy, or the giant expectations crushing him. She only knew him as Adrian, the quiet boy who preferred warm lattes and corner tables. And he didn't want to ruin that. With her, he felt real. But the deeper he fell for her, the more he feared the truth. Because girls like Elena didn't fall for boys raised in glass castles, surrounded by secrets. 3 weeks after meeting her, they took their first walk together. It was late evening. The streetlights glowed amber. Elena held a cup of hot chocolate in her hands, and Adrian watched the way the light reflected in her eyes. "Tell me something true about you," she said suddenly. His heart stumbled. "Like what?" "Anything," she shrugged. "Anything honest." He swallowed hard. She deserved honesty. She deserved everything. But the truth felt dangerous. He began slowly. "I'm not who people think I am." She looked at him, really looked, and her voice softened. "Nobody is." The words hit him harder than she knew. Before he could say more, a black SUV he recognized too well turned the corner. His father's security team. He'd escaped them for weeks, but they'd finally tracked him. Adrian's chest tightened. If Elena saw who he really was, if she realized he wasn't just a simple boy who liked quiet nights and warm drinks, everything might break. The SUV slowed. The back window rolled down, and a familiar voice called his name with icy authority. "Adrian." Elena's eyes widened as she turned toward the car, and in that frozen second, everything he'd been trying to protect was about to unravel. Adrian's breath caught as the tinted window lowered the rest of the way, revealing Marcus Hale, his father's most trusted head of security, a man whose presence alone meant there was no escape left. His sharp eyes flicked to Elena, then back to Adrian, silently demanding he get in the vehicle. The tension in the air tightened like a knot pulled too hard. Elena stepped closer to Adrian instinctively, her brows drawing together. Is everything okay? Adrian forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Yeah, I need a second. But Marcus didn't give him that. The SUV engine hummed impatiently, and its polished black metal looked painfully out of place on a humble, quiet street full of modest homes and small trees wrapped in warm fairy lights. A few people peeked through their windows, confused by why such an expensive vehicle was here. Elena, Adrian said softly, turning toward her, I swear, I didn't mean to get you involved in anything complicated. She searched his face with genuine concern. Are you in trouble? Not the kind you think, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Before she could ask more, Marcus opened the door and stepped out. He was tall, imposing, and dressed in a tailored suit that belonged in corporate towers, not on cracked sidewalks. Sir, Marcus said with a slight nod, we need to take you home. Your father insists. The word home felt colder than the December air. Adrian clenched his jaw. I told you I didn't want to be followed. And I told you your father has final authority, Marcus replied calmly. Elena looked between them, confusion growing into something sharper. Hurt. Adrian, who exactly is your father? He felt his heart twist. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to strip away the lies and let her see him as he truly was. But the way she looked at him, with warmth, with genuine understanding, with trust, he feared losing it all in one confession. Elena, he began, voice unsteady. I didn't lie to you. I just didn't tell you everything. She crossed her arms unconsciously, bracing herself. Then tell me now. The street felt silent except for the SUV engine and the faint chatter of distant neighbors. Adrian opened his mouth, trying to find a version of the truth that wouldn't shatter what they had, but Marcus stepped closer. Sir, with respect, this is neither the time nor place. Your father is waiting. The interruption snapped something in Adrian. I don't care what he's waiting for, he snapped, surprising even himself. Marcus faltered for the first time. I'm not going with you until I finish talking to her. Elena's eyes softened, but the SUV door opened again. This time, Adrian's father, Richard Hale, stepped out, and the street seemed to freeze at the sight of him. Tall, impeccably dressed, with silver at his temples and an expression carved from stone, Richard Hale looked like he carried the weight and ownership of the world. And he did. Elena instinctively stepped back. Adrian, Richard said, his voice low but carrying authority that years of wealth and power had sharpened. Get in the car. No, Adrian replied. It was the first time he'd ever said that word to his father in public. Maybe the first time in years. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, but with curiosity, as if he were analyzing a puzzle piece that had suddenly shifted shape. And who? Richard said, looking at Elena with polite but icy detachment. Is this young woman? My friend, Adrian said quickly. Elena blinked, the word friend cutting her more than she expected. She didn't show it, but Adrian felt the shift. Richard offered her a gentle, distant smile, the kind he used during charity events when acknowledging the existence of regular people. My son has responsibilities, he said. I apologize if excursions disrupted your evening. The word excursions made Adrian stiffen. Elena lifted her chin. He didn't disrupt anything. He was just being himself. Richard paused. Being himself, he repeated, a hint of disapproval slipping through. Adrian, we're leaving. There are matters that require your attention. Adrian shook his head slowly. She deserves to know the truth. Richard's expression hardened. Adrian. For a moment, father and son stood facing each other, years of unspoken expectations pressing between them. Then Adrian turned away from him and faced Elena. My real name is Adrian Hale, he said quietly. My family owns Hale Corporation. I didn't hide it to deceive you. I hid it because everyone treats me differently once they know. Elena didn't speak. I wanted you to see me, he whispered. Not the money, not the name, just me. Her eyes softened, but confusion flickered there too. Why didn't you trust me with that from the start? He swallowed hard. Because I want to lose the only thing in my life that feels real. Elena's expression faltered. And that was when Richard stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Adrian's shoulder. "We're done here," Richard said. Adrian gently shook off the hand, but Marcus moved subtly closer, ready to intervene if things escalated. Richard exhaled. "Adrian, get in the car. Now, this girl," he gestured lightly toward Elena, "doesn't belong in our world. You know that." Elena's face paled. Adrian's chest tightened with anger and shame. "Don't talk about it like that." Richard's voice didn't rise, but the coldness in it cut deeper than yelling. "You are a Hale. Your future is defined. Your time with whomever this is ends tonight." Elena stepped back as if struck. She tried to keep her expression neutral, but Adrian saw the pain she tried to hide. "Adrian," she whispered, maybe you should go." He turned to her quickly. "No, Elena, don't say that. Please." But her eyes lowered to the ground, and her voice trembled despite her attempt at steadiness. "You have a whole world I know nothing about, and I don't want to be the reason you're fighting with your family." Elena. Before he could finish, Richard reached for his arm again, and something in Elena snapped. "Just go," she said softly without looking at him. "It's fine." The word fine broke him more than anything. Richard gently guided him toward the car. Adrian resisted until the last moment, eyes locked on Elena, silently begging her to say something, anything to stop him. But she didn't look up, and the door closed. The SUV began to pull away. Elena stood motionless on the sidewalk, hugging her arms to her chest, staring at the faint imprint of his footsteps on the concrete. And Adrian watched her shrink in the rear window as his world, once again, became a gilded prison. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows as the SUV glided to night, but Adrian barely saw any of it. His mind was back on that sidewalk, on the way Elena wouldn't look at him, on the way her voice trembled even though she tried to hide it. Every mile between them felt like a door shutting in his face. Richard Hale sat across from him, arms folded, watching his son with the detached calm of someone who always believed he knew best. "This emotional impulse of yours is becoming a liability," he said finally. Adrian didn't answer. "You disappear for hours every day. You ignore meetings. You neglect your training. For what?" Richard's tone sharpened. "A barista from a neighborhood you have no business in." Something in Adrian flared, but he kept his gaze on the window. If he looked at his father, he might have said something he couldn't take back. Richard leaned forward slightly. "This is not how a future CEO behaves." Adrian turned his head slowly. "Maybe I don't want to be the future CEO." Marcus, seated in the front, stiffened almost imperceptibly. Richard's jaw tightened. "That," his father said, "is not a choice you get to make." The car went silent again, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. When they finally arrived at the Hale mansion, an enormous estate glowing like a palace on the moon, Adrian felt nothing. The grand entrance, the polished marble floors, the towering chandeliers, none of it felt like home. He walked inside, ignoring the greeting nods from staff lined along the hall. His mother, elegant in a silk evening gown, appeared at the top of the stairway. "Adrian, darling, where on earth were you? We had donors waiting. You missed an entire charity dinner." Her voice was sweet, but it carried expectation like perfume. Richard stepped in behind him. "He was busy," he said, his tone heavy with disapproval. "Too busy." His mother studied Adrian's expression, and her smile faded. "What happened?" "He met someone," Richard answered for him. Adrian felt heat flood his face, anger, embarrassment, frustration. "Mom, it's not like that. And Dad, she's not just someone. Her name is Elena." His mother's brows lifted. "Elena who?" Adrian hesitated. He didn't actually know her last name. He'd never needed it. She felt familiar, without labels. Richard let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Exactly." His mother's expression shifted from curiosity to polite concern. "Sweetheart, we understand you want normal experiences, but you must be careful. People take advantage once they learn who you are." "She didn't know who I was," Adrian said quietly. "That's the point." His parents exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations they perfected over years of raising a son to fit a mold he'd never chosen. His mother stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his face. "You're overwhelmed. You're tired. Get some rest, okay?" She kissed his forehead, her affection warm but distant, like everything else in his world. Adrian nodded, not trusting his voice. He went to his room, large enough to be its own apartment. Yet it felt smaller than the quiet corner table at Maple and Steam. He collapsed onto his bed, replaying every second with Elena. Her smile, her laugh, the way she listened, the way she didn't care who he was, and the way her heart cracked when she learned the truth. He didn't sleep, not even for a moment. By morning, the house was already alive with activity. Meetings, calls, schedules, expectations. He was supposed to attend a board brunch and a press preview for an upcoming gala. But he didn't go. Instead, he grabbed his hoodie, slipped out the back entrance, and took one of the motorcycles his father never let him ride. The engine roared and he sped down the city roads, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the only destination that felt right. Maple and Steam. But when he arrived and pushed the door open, something inside him sank. Elena wasn't there. The barista who usually worked mornings, Megan, looked up with a smile that immediately faded when she recognized him. "Oh," she said, her tone shifting to something careful. "It's you." Adrian's heart thudded. "Is Elena here?" Megan hesitated, drying a mug slowly. "She's not working today." "Is she okay?" His voice betrayed him, raw, anxious. Megan looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. "She's upset, Adrian." He winced at the way she said his name, not with warmth like Elena did, but with quiet disappointment. "She didn't tell us much," Megan continued. "Just that someone she liked wasn't who she thought." Adrian swallowed hard. "I didn't lie to her." "You kinda did," Megan said, not unkindly, "by not telling her the truth when you should've." He had no defense. Megan softened slightly. "Look, Elena's been through a lot. She doesn't trust easily. And when she finally meets someone who makes her smile again, someone who seems normal, and then instead finds out he's a billionaire heir with bodyguards and a father who looks like he eats emotions for breakfast, it's a lot." He closed his eyes, the guilt crushing him. "Do you know where she is?" he asked. Megan hesitated again. "She went home." "Where is that?" She folded her arms. "Why should I tell you?" "Because I care about her," he said, the words coming out broken. Megan studied him, testing his sincerity. "People like you don't stay long enough to fix what they break." Adrian stepped closer. "Then let me prove I'm not like them." Megan blinked, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. She exhaled slowly. "She lives on Willow Street," she said quietly. "Apartment 3B. Adrian whispered, "Thank you." He left immediately, heart hammering, hope fragile but burning. But by the time he reached Willow Street and climbed to the third floor, he heard voices behind the door of 3B. A woman's voice, older, worried, and Elena's voice, soft, shaken. "You can't keep letting people like him into your life," the woman said. "He comes from a world where everything is temporary, even people." Elena didn't reply. Adrian lifted his hand to knock, but he froze when he heard Elena's next words. "Mom, what if I already let him in too much?" Adrian stood frozen outside apartment 3B, his raised knuckles trembling inches from the door. Elena's voice, so soft, so unsure, cut straight through him. "Mom, what if I already let him in too much?" His breath caught painfully in his chest. He leaned closer without meaning to, heart pounding like it was trying to break free. He hadn't expected to hear her sound so vulnerable. He hadn't expected to be the reason for it. Her mother sighed, the sound heavy with years of worry. "Sweetheart, you have such a big heart." But big hearts break the easiest. There was a pause, the creak of old floorboards, perhaps her mother moving closer to her. "Boys like him, they don't end up with girls like us. They visit our world, they admire for a moment, and then they leave. And when they leave, they take the best parts of us with them." Adrian's fingers curled slowly into a fist. He felt that statement like a blade turning inside him. He didn't blame the woman. If anything, she was right. That was how his world worked. Temporary friendships. temporary relationships, temporary feelings, everything replaceable, everything expected to be perfect, everything expected to be shallow. But with Elena, none of it was temporary. Inside the apartment, Elena sniffed quietly, and the sound made something inside Adrian fracture. "I wish he hadn't lied," Elena whispered. "I just wish he told me who he was." "He didn't lie about who he is," her mother said gently. "He lied about what he comes with." Adrian felt his eyes burn. He wanted to explain. He wanted to tell Elena that he didn't hide because he was ashamed of her. He hid because he was terrified of losing her the second the truth came out. But standing behind the door, listening to the pain he caused, it felt wrong. He knew he had to knock. Before he could talk himself out of it, he exhaled shakily and tapped his knuckles against the door. A stunned silence fell inside. He heard quick footsteps, light ones, and then the door cracked open just an inch. Elena's eye appeared in the gap. Wide, startled, already glossy with tears, she tried to blink away. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then she opened the door a little more, just enough for her to step into the hallway, but not enough for him to see fully inside. She crossed her arms protectively across her chest, the same way she had on the sidewalk the night before. "Adrian," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "Elena, can we talk?" Her mother appeared behind her, worry knitting her eyebrows together when she saw him. Elena turned slightly. "Mom, can you give us a minute?" The older woman hesitated, clearly unsure, but she touched Elena's shoulder gently before stepping back inside. The door closed, leaving Adrian and Elena alone in the dim hallway. Elena glanced at him, then at the floor, then back at him. "How did you find me?" He didn't want to say it, but he also refused to lie again. "I went to the cafe. Megan told me." Elena shook her head, a complicated mix of frustration and softness in her expression. "You shouldn't have come." "I know," he said quietly, "but I had to." She leaned against the wall, her shoulders slumping. "I don't understand you, Adrian. One minute you're this normal, kind guy who just likes cinnamon lattes, and the next minute, your father shows up in an SUV telling me I don't belong anywhere near you." Adrian closed his eyes briefly. "I'm sorry. He had no right to talk to you like that." Elena let out a small, humorless laugh. "Your father didn't scare me." She met his eyes again. "What scared me was realizing how huge the difference is between our lives." Adrian stepped closer. "I don't care about that." "But I have to," she replied. "I have to care. I don't have the luxury not to." He felt a lump form in his throat. "Elena, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't mean to drag you into my world. I like being in yours." She stared at him, stunned by his honesty. "Then why didn't you tell me who you were?" "Because I didn't want you to treat me differently," he said, voice cracking. "Because every person in my life sees my last name before they see me. And for the first time, someone saw me." Elena's eyes softened, but her jaw tensed. "But you didn't give me the chance to see all of you. You let me fall for the version you showed me." The words hit him like a physical blow. "You fell for me?" Her lips parted, and she looked away quickly, cheeks warming. "It doesn't matter now." "It matters to me," he said, taking another step, leaving barely a breath of space between them. "Elena, She held up a hand to stop him. "Please don't say anything you don't mean." He blinked, stunned. "Everything I feel for you is real." She looked at him, eyes shining with emotion she fought to control. "Maybe, but your world doesn't make room for people like me. I'm already drowning in bills, my mom works double shifts, and I barely sleep half the week. I can't compete with girls who come from the same universe you do. I can't keep up with the expectations, the scrutiny, the pressure. I don't want any of that," Adrian insisted. "I want you." Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "And what happens when your father finds out you came here again? What happens when he decides I'm a distraction you need to lose?" Adrian inhaled sharply. "I won't let him." "You can't promise that," she said, shaking her head. "You don't know the power he has over you." He felt the truth of that like a cold hand around his throat. She looked down at her hands. "I'm scared, Adrian. I'm scared of getting hurt." I'm scared of becoming something your world looks down on. You're not something, he said, voice low, desperate. You're everything I didn't know I needed. For the first time, her eyes filled completely with tears. Adrian, her voice cracked. I need time. He felt his heart squeeze, so tightly it hurt. Time. She nodded. I can't think clearly. I can't breathe around all this chaos. I just need a little space to figure out what this means. What we mean. He wanted to reach for her. He wanted to pull her into his arms and promise he'd fix everything. But he forced himself to stay still. Okay, he whispered. Take all the time you need. Elena wiped a tear with the back of her hand. Thank you. Adrian stepped back, giving her room, giving her air, giving her whatever she needed even though it shattered him. She took one slow step toward the door. Adrian. He looked up. Elena's voice softened, barely a breath. Please don't disappear. Then she slipped inside and closed the door gently, leaving him standing alone in the dim hallway, hopeful, heartbroken, and more determined than ever. And somewhere behind that door, Elena leaned against the wood, eyes closed, whispering a silent wish she wasn't brave enough to say out loud yet. Adrian stayed in the dim hallway long after the door closed, staring at the place where Elena had stood only seconds earlier. Her last words, "Please don't disappear," echoed through him like a fragile lifeline he wasn't sure he deserved. He pressed his palms against his eyes, breathing slowly, forcing himself not to knock again, not to beg, not to push. She needed space. He had to respect that. Yet walking away from her door felt like moving through quicksand. He took the stairs instead of the elevator, each step heavier than the last. When he finally pushed through the building's lobby doors and stepped outside, the cold air slapped his face, grounding him. His motorcycle sat where he left it, engine cold, seat glistening with the faintest trace of dew. He swung a leg over it, but didn't start it. Instead, he rested his head on the handlebars. He had told the truth. He had shown her everything. And she still pulled back because of him, because of the world he came from, because of the people who controlled his life. He wasn't angry at her. He was angry at the cage he lived in. After several minutes, he straightened up and started the engine. The motorcycle roared to life, loud enough to draw a few annoyed looks from neighbors peering out of windows. Adrian ignored them and sped away, cutting through streets with no destination in mind. He just needed movement, wind, noise, anything to drown out the ache inside him. But eventually, he ended up at the only place that made sense. Maple and Steam. It was closing time, lights dimmed, chairs stacked, and Megan sweeping near the counter. When she saw him walk in, her expression softened a little. Bad day? She asked, though it was obvious from his face. He didn't have the strength to pretend. She asked for space. Megan leaned against the counter, folded her arms. Honestly, that's still better than what I expected. Adrian blinked. You expected her to walk away? Not because she doesn't care, Megan said, but because she cares too much. Elena, she's had a rough couple of years. Her dad passed away last spring. Her mom works 2 jobs. They're barely holding things together. She doesn't take risks unless she's forced to. Adrian's chest tightened painfully. He hadn't known any of that. Megan continued, voice gentler now. It wasn't you, Adrian. It was everything around you. He dragged a hand through his hair. I want to help. I want to make things easier for her. Megan shook her head firmly. Then don't try to fix her life. Don't show up with expensive solutions. Just be someone who doesn't make things worse. He nodded, absorbing the truth in that. Do you think she'll talk to me again? Megan studied him thoughtfully. I think Elena's scared. But scared people don't ask you not to disappear. He felt a tiny flicker of hope. Megan exhaled. Just be patient. And don't show up with bodyguards next time. A humorless laugh escaped him. Trust me, if I can avoid them, I will. She raised a brow. If you can, they track everything, Adrian admitted quietly. My phone, my card, even my bike sometimes. Megan stared at him. That sounds suffocating. It is. She hesitated, then offered him a half smile. We're closing, but you want a drink to go? Adrian nodded. Her favorite. Megan's expression softened again. Hot chocolate, extra marshmallows. As she made it, he watched the steam swirl up from the cup. It reminded him of the quiet evenings he spent here, before everything exploded. When she handed it to him, he held it like something fragile. "Thanks," he said. "Don't make her regret trusting you," Megan replied. "That's all." He nodded, pocketed the cup in a carrier bag, and left. The ride home was slower this time. He wasn't in a hurry. The world felt too heavy to race through. When he reached the mansion, the gate slid open automatically. Security cameras tracked him as he pulled into the driveway. Before he even removed his helmet, the front door opened and Richard Hale stepped out with the cold precision of a man expecting answers. "You left without permission again," his father said, voice low and controlled. "I trusted you would make better decisions after last night." Adrian removed the helmet, set it down, and looked him directly in the eyes. "I'm not a child." "You behave like one," Richard said sharply. "Sneaking out, chasing a girl who clearly doesn't belong in our life. You cannot afford distractions right now." "That's not your decision," Adrian snapped. "It absolutely is," his father countered. "Until you take your place in the company and prove you can be responsible. I don't want your world." Adrian exploded, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "I don't want the constant pressure, the expectations, the manipulation. I don't want a life where I have to get permission to breathe." Richard stared at him, stunned not by the words, but by the fire behind them. "That girl," his father said slowly, "is the reason you're saying this." "No," Adrian replied. "She's the reason I finally realized it." Richard's jaw tightened. "You think she will accept you if you walk away from everything? If you abandon your responsibilities?" Adrian's voice softened, steady but aching. "I don't know, but I'm willing to find out." Richard stepped closer, authority hardening his features. "You are not throwing away your future over a girl who works in a cafe." Adrian stepped back. "You don't get to choose what matters to me." A tense silence settled between them. Then Adrian said something he'd never had the courage to say before. "If you want to control the company, take it. But you don't own me." Richard's expression flickered, just once, with something like surprise, maybe fear, maybe the realization that his son was slipping from his grip. Adrian didn't wait for a response. He walked past him, into the mansion and up the stairs. He entered his room, shut the door, and sank onto the floor with his back against it. He set the hot chocolate, her hot chocolate, gently beside him. He pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered over Elena's contact. He typed, "I'm giving you space like you asked, but I meant everything I said. I'm here when you're ready." He didn't hit send. Not yet, because at that moment, the screen lit up on its own. A new message from Elena. "Are you home?" Adrian stared at the screen, hardly believing the words glowing back at him. "Are you home?" For a moment, he wondered if exhaustion was playing tricks on him. He blinked, rubbed his thumb across the message, read it again. It was real. His heart kicked against his ribs, equal parts hope and fear. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before he finally typed back, "Yes. Are you okay?" The three dots appeared immediately, blinking with quiet urgency. "I don't know. Can we talk?" His pulse jumped. He didn't hesitate. "Of course. Do you want me to come to you?" A long pause followed. He feared she was rethinking everything. Then her reply appeared, gentle but steady. "No, I'm already outside." Adrian shot to his feet, breath caught somewhere between disbelief and anticipation. He grabbed a cup of cooled hot chocolate, instinct maybe hope, and rushed downstairs. Through the tall glass doors of the foyer, he saw her before he even opened them. Elena stood at the edge of the steps, arms wrapped around herself, her sweater too thin for the cold. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun like she'd left the house in a hurry, eyes wide and unsure under the glow of the driveway lights. She looked so out of place in front of the massive mansion gates, yet she stood there with a quiet grace that made the entire estate feel smaller. Adrian stepped out slowly, afraid she might vanish if he moved too fast. "Elena," he breathed. She swallowed, her breath forming a faint cloud in the cold air. I didn't plan on coming here. I just couldn't sit in my room anymore. I kept thinking about everything you said. He stepped toward her, not too close, waiting for her to guide the distance between them. I'm glad you came. She looked down at her hands. I shouldn't have. Your dad already thinks I'm some kind of problem. You're not, Adrian said instantly. He's wrong. Elena didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a shaky breath and scanned the sprawling mansion behind him. It's so different, she whispered. Your world. Your house alone is bigger than my entire building. Adrian didn't know what to say. He'd never noticed the size of it until he saw her standing there, dwarfed by everything he'd taken for granted. Finally, she looked at him again. When you left yesterday, I felt something break a little, and I hated that. I hated how much power you suddenly had over my feelings. Power? He repeated softly. Yes, she said, voice trembling. Because you made me feel safe. You made me feel seen. And then your father showed up and reminded me exactly how small I am compared to everything in your world. Adrian stepped closer, slowly. You're not small. Not to me. Elena's eyes glistened. You say that now. But one day, what if you don't? I won't, he said firmly. You can't know that, she replied, shaking her head. People change. Life changes. Pressure changes everything. And you have a whole future already carved out by other people. Not anymore, he said, surprising even himself with how certain the words felt. Her eyebrows knitted. What do you mean? Adrian inhaled deeply. I told my father he doesn't know my life. I told him he can keep the company if he wants it. I'm not letting him control me anymore. Elena's eyes widened in shock. Adrian, you can't just walk away from $1 billion legacy because of me. I'm not doing it because of you, he said gently, truthfully. I'm doing it because of me. You just help me see what I really want. She blinked, stunned into silence. He reached into the carrier bag and held out the warm cup. I brought you this. Hot chocolate. Extra marshmallows. She stared at the cup, then at him. Her voice cracked. Why would you do that after everything? Because you said you needed time, Adrian replied softly. You didn't say you didn't want me. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, embarrassed. You shouldn't be this kind to me. I don't know how to be anything else with you. Her breath hitched. The silence between them thickened. Fragile, alive, charged with everything unsaid. But then the front door behind Adrian creaked open. Richard Hale stepped outside. Elena stiffened instantly, withdrawing as though burned. Adrian instinctively moved in front of her, a subtle shield. Richard's voice was crisp. Adrian, I would appreciate a word. No, Adrian said without turning around. Not now. Richard's gaze shifted to Elena, and though his face remained neutral, his eyes carried the weight of judgment. Miss Brooks, I assume that's your last name. Elena swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Richard nodded once, polite but cold. I believe you're a good person. But good intentions do not change the realities of class, expectation, and responsibility. Adrian snapped. Dad. Elena touched his arm lightly. It's okay. But her touch only fueled Adrian's anger. No, it's not. He doesn't get to make you feel small. Richard lifted an eyebrow. This is exactly my point. You're not thinking rationally. Because I'm done thinking the way you want. Adrian shot back. Richard's jaw tightened. You will regret throwing away everything. I'd regret never fighting for something real, Adrian replied. Silence. Richard looked at his son with something unreadable. Pride? Frustration? Fear? Then finally exhaled. Have your moment, he said quietly. But moments don't last. He turned and went back inside, the door clicking shut behind him. The night felt still again. Heavy. Electric. Elena looked shaken. I shouldn't be here. I didn't mean to cause more trouble. You didn't, Adrian said. He causes his own trouble. She gave a small, disbelieving laugh. Your life is chaos. It's quieter with you, he said. It makes sense with you. Elena's breath shuddered. She finally took the hot chocolate from his hand, fingers brushing his. I don't know where this is going, she whispered. I don't know if I'm strong enough for your world. Adrian held her gaze, soft and sure. Then let me step into yours. Her lips parted, surprised, moved, terrified. Adrian. He lifted a hand slowly, gently, resting it against her cheek, not pulling her in, just offering warmth she could take or reject. She leaned into it, just a little, just enough, and in that tiny movement, everything shifted. But Elena's next words were shaky, fragile enough to break in the wind. We're not ready for this, not yet. The days that followed unfolded like the slow turning of a fragile page, soft, delicate, but irreversible. Elena didn't disappear, not this time. She kept her distance, yes, but she didn't retreat into silence. Her messages were shorter, gentler, thoughtful in a way that made Adrian hold his breath every time his phone lit up. She wasn't running. She was learning how to stay without losing herself. Adrian understood. Some loves needed space to breathe before they could stand on their own. But he also knew something else. His father's world was tightening around them like an invisible fist. The whispers in the Hale mansion grew louder. Advisors came and went. Plans were rearranged. His father stopped inviting him to meetings altogether. The message was clear. If you choose her, you choose a different life. One evening, Adrian found Elena sitting alone on a rooftop of her apartment building. Knees pulled to her chest, the city lights flickering around her like scattered stars. She didn't ask him how he found her. She didn't need to. His presence had become something she subconsciously expected and quietly feared. He sat beside her, careful not to touch her, letting the silence settle before speaking. My father wants me to move to New York. The words were steady, but beneath them was a war. Elena closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. And you'll go. She said it not with anger, but with acceptance, the kind that hurts more because it means she isn't fighting for herself. I won't, Adrian whispered. She turned her head sharply. You have to. It's your future, Adrian. No, he said. It's the future he wants, not the one I choose. Elena hugged her knees a little tighter. You can't build a life on rejection. One day you'll regret what you threw away. He studied her carefully, the girl who had taught him more about truth in weeks than the world had in years. Maybe, but I'll regret it more if I walk into a life that feels wrong. Her throat tightened. You shouldn't build your life around me. I'm not, he replied softly. I'm building it toward the version of myself I found because of you. Elena looked away, torn between fear and longing. The wind pushed strands of hair across her face, and she tucked them behind her ear with a trembling hand. I don't know how to stand beside you in that world, she admitted. I don't know the rules. I don't know how to survive the judgment. You don't need to survive it, he said. I'll walk in front of it. I'll shield you from what I can, and what I can't, we'll face together. Elena let out a short, emotional laugh. You make it sound so easy. It isn't, he said. It's terrifying. But loving you is the one thing that never felt confusing. Her breath caught, hope flickering in her eyes like a fragile flame. Adrian. Before she could finish, the rooftop door swung open. A tall figure stepped out. Richard Hale. Elena shot to her feet in shock. Adrian stood as well, instinctively positioning himself slightly in front of her. Richard approached slowly, his usual imposing aura softened by something deeper, heavier. He looked at the boy he raised, and then at the girl who had somehow become a fault line in their perfect family structure. I didn't come here to separate you, Richard began. The admission alone was enough to stun them both. I came to understand. Elena's eyes widened. Adrian didn't move. Richard took a breath, steady but heavy. For weeks, I've watched my son fight for something I didn't understand. I thought it was rebellion, immaturity, infatuation. His gaze shifted to Elena. But he isn't a child rebelling. He's a young man choosing. Elena's lips parted slightly. Adrian stood frozen. You changed him, Richard continued. Not by molding him, but by giving him space to become someone I never allowed him to be. He swallowed hard, the weight of his own words settling on him. And perhaps that is what love looks like. Elena's knees almost buckled. Adrian steadied her with the gentlest touch. Richard exhaled. I don't know your world. You don't know ours. But if you're both willing to meet in the middle, perhaps neither world has to win. Adrian stepped forward. So you accept this? Richard looked at his son with a tired, almost defeated softness. I accept that a man should have the right to choose his heart before he chooses his inheritance. Elena's breath trembled, a tear slipping down her cheek. And you, Richard said, turning to her, you don't need to change who you are to fit our life. If you can stand beside him as equals, not as someone who feels small, then I will stand aside. The silence that followed was thick with disbelief. Elena whispered, I don't know if I'm strong enough. Richard shook his head. Strength isn't loud. It's quiet. It's choosing to stay when everything tries to push you away. He looked at Adrian. And you'll need to protect each other from the parts of the world that neither of you understand yet. He stepped back, giving them a space he had never given before. The rest, you two will have to figure out. With that, he left, closing the rooftop door behind him. Elena pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. Adrian gently took her other hand. You asked earlier if we're ready, he said softly. Truth is, no one ever is. Not for real love. Not for the hard parts. Her fingers tightened around his. But we don't have to be ready, he whispered. We just have to be willing. Elena met his eyes full of fear, hope, love, uncertainty, all tangled together in a way that felt painfully human. And for the first time, she didn't run from it. Adrian pulled her into his arms. She led him. The city hummed below them, cars passing like tiny veins of light, the wind carrying the warmth of something new. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And for them, real was finally enough.